Hi, hello, a blessed afternoon to everybody. My name is Jacob Osae as usual, and today is another session of our creative writing masterclass titled "The Art of Storytelling for Freelancers and Creatives." And I'm so excited to come your way again with the eighth session. So this session eight of our creative writing masterclass. We've gone through a whole sessions, and for all those who have been with us to this level, I want to say I'm very grateful for flowing through, and I hope you have learned a lot from all the sessions. So we have a final session coming up next week. So try and be around, and that'll be the last session, and that'll be the end of this masterclass sessions. And you go into the world and be the best writer ever. So today you're going to look at something very simple, and what you're going to look at is resolution and ending well. You know, like the saying goes, anything that has a beginning has an end. Yeah, but to surprise you a bit, that's not true for storytelling. No story has an end, actually. No story actually has an end. Look at the story of Jesus Christ. Like he was born in a manger, he died at Calvary. So we're like, oh, that's the end of the guy's life. But actually, his death was actually a new chapter in his life as the Son of God and as the one with, the authority as the heir of the kingdom. So his story actually continued in the Acts of the Apostles throughout, and it's still continuing nowadays. So there's not really the thing of the fact that a story actually ends. For me, I don't believe that any story ends. Every story has the propensity to continue, but we actually pause. We don't end. We don't actually end because if you ask J.K. Rowling, the author of Harry Potter, J.K. Rowling wanted to just write one piece of story, but after the first piece, he said that no, there's more that I can write. So she continued writing. Even I believe that she can even do more after the part seven of the novel, because the novel ended at part seven, and there's more she can even write if she comes back again. So what I like to say is that stories don't really end. Stories actually pause. So there's so much you can always add to a story to make it spark up again to continue writing. To continue writing. So the element of resolution is more of like a sinusoidal wave, like a sine curve. For those of that level of mathematics and physics, AC theory. So we have alternating current. Alternating current is sinusoidal. So it goes up and comes down. I think that is the structure of most stories. It goes up and comes down. There's tension and there's resolution. So last week we explored tension, climax, conflict catalyst. And today you're looking at resolution, how to resolve your story. Because mostly it's that way. Sometimes you can have a story climbing higher with so much suspense, there's no resolution. And sometimes it gets the audience freaked out sometimes. So it's good to always incorporate a bit of resolution into your story so that like mostly the audience are like, okay, that's come down. So what's the next thing? Then you blow their minds again. So resolution is important. However, resolution should not necessarily be the end of your story. I believe there's so much you can still tell, so much you can do, and your story shouldn't necessarily end. So, in the light of this, we're going to look at an interesting short story that I wrote. It's called Iron Boy. So, Iron Boy happens to be a such science fiction and fantasy story, a sci-fi novel, sci-fi short story that was published by Amata AD Center for Creative Writing, AECC, Accra University College of Communication. That's in Accra, Adabaka. So they called for an anthology set in the northern region, and I sent in this story called Iron Boy, and amazingly, this story was actually selected to be uh, published. And you're actually going to look at Iron Boy, and I'm going to ask you, do you think the story actually ended or the story actually could continue? Because for me, I was thinking about, I was looking at creating a novel out of the short story. This is actually a short story. It's not a novel. It's a short story of 8 pages, A4 sheet, 8 pages. But there's so much, in the story that give way for a complete novel. You know, I'm just going to read. I'm not going to read the whole story because it's quite long. So I'll read uh, a bit. Okay, let's see whether I can read the whole story. So I want you to see it. Iron Boy. Yeah. So Iron Boy by Jacob A. Osae. It's a science fiction short story in the Larabanga anthology. That was published in 2019, 2019, June 2019, by Amatei Center of Creative Writing, African University College of Communications, AUCC, for those who know that university in Alabama. Yeah. So this Iron Boy by Jacob A. Osae, myself, and it's an interesting story. So let's get into it. Malik Asala moved haphazardly. He just saw the key into his doorknob and entered his apartment. He was returning from Caspers. The co-worker invited him to his house for a small dinner and conversation. Malik struggled to breathe. He was now inside his two-bedroom apartment, and all he needed to do was to get to his refrigerator for water. His stomach started to churn. Immediately, he left Casper's place, and he knew there was something not quite right. He let out three deep coughs when he finally closed the door of the refrigerator. Oh, Jesus, what is happening to me? He cried. He struggled for a bottle of water and gulped it down quickly. After convulsing as a man possessed, he slammed onto the floor. The churning in his stomach was now escalating into excruciating pain. He was struggling to move. He took in deep breaths on the floor, followed by coughs that brought out blood. The cough, he coughed again, and more blood oozed. And then it hit him. It hit him. I am dying. I have been poisoned. His brain knew what was going on in his digestive and respiratory system. If only I could get my hands on a solution of vinegar, potassium hydroxide, with a taint of peppermint. Of course, he knew he was not going to be able to get those materials because actually that's how he would neutralize the poison. So the guy was quite intelligent that he knew that these are the elements that can help him neutralize the poison in the system. A better idea hit him. He reached for his cell phone from his left pocket. He checked the blood time and put hashtag 192 for the time of the General Hospital on readout. After many attempts, no one picked. Malik dropped the cell phone and rolled on the floor in pain. I'm not ready to die. Not today, he resolved. Malik mastered the strength left in him and slid painfully towards his working desk. He struggled to sit on the chair behind his desk, logging onto his laptop and deftly adjusting an iron helmet with connecting wires onto his pulsating head. Malik rested on the chair for a minute. He wanted whom to call. His mother? No, too much beef between them. His father, dead 7 years ago. His only friend, Jariah. His boss? At 27, Malik considered himself quite handsome and his colleagues thought he was a genius. As a senior IT officer at Abanga Industries in Tamale, he was hated by many for being too known, but loved by a significant few for his solutions approach work. Jariah among them, and more importantly, the owner of the company with whom he had developing a secret prototype that will take over the world. As he entered the password laboriously on the keyboard, his mind went back 3 days earlier. He was unexpectedly confronted with information that could potentially damage the reputation of Abanga Industries or threaten the freedom and the job of the perpetrator of the situation. Caspar, the condemned co-worker, had invited him to his house for some small dinner and conversation to see the way forward. Caspar, oh Caspar, what have you done to me? Caspar, oh Caspar, what have you done to me? Is this a payment for my principles? Malik cried as he struggled with the contraption on his head. When it was firmly fixed, he allowed himself to slip back onto the bloody floor. He managed to finish the keying in his commands. I dash R dash O that earn dash under space that boy dash BOY hashtag. This has to work, he prayed. He's been working on this technology for the past 7 years. He sighed painfully from his relief as he heard the dull, fluttering sound of a flying machine floating in the corner of the room. It was a black kite-shaped drone levitating in the air. He watched it through cloudy eyes as it hovered beneath the ceiling. Forgive me, ma'am. I have should have taken your advice, Malik cried. He scrolled down the options and selected 0603195 and then pressed permanently on the enter key of the keyboard. Simultaneously, there was a surge of an electrical pulse from the helmet into the laptop CPU. Now he was ready to come what may. He let himself go and allowed death to transit him to the other side. So this is actually the introduction to this story. I'm not sure I'll be able to read the whole story yet, but in the scene, the first thing we get to see that there's this guy who has been poisoned after he has gone to have dinner with a friend and is coming back home. And he comes back home and he realizes that he has been poisoned, and he uses the last strength he has to initiate something that he has been working on for a long time. And actually, just to give you a summary of what happens, as this happens, the following day we realize that the guy is actually dead, and it becomes a big issue in the whole of the company. So they have a meeting to discuss how possible this happened. And in the meeting, they realize that an amount of money has been stolen from the company's coffers. And they actually try to connect the fact that maybe Malik, who had died, is actually the person who may have stolen the money. And they try to reason out how could that be possible? Because how can someone who has died steal the money? So they involve the police to make the investigation on one, the death of Malik, and also the money that has been stolen. Now we realize that in the beginning, with what I read, you realize that the guy was actually initiating a computer program. So actually, what he initiated is actually a drone robot, an invisible drone robot. So what happened is that he actually transferred his consciousness into the drone robot, and he initiated a command that the drone robot should find out who actually poisoned him and expose him, like gather evidence to be able to expose the guy who had poisoned Malik. So that actually becomes like the main quest of the robot. And for the robot to be able to accomplish this thing, the robot actually reveals itself to the only friend Malik has called Charaya Akoyango. In the company, Malik is not really on good terms with a lot of people, but there is one lady that Malik has a good relationship with called Jaraya. So the drone actually goes to this lady, and there's an interesting conversation between the drone and the lady, which I want to read out for all of us to listen to. Charaya couldn't understand. Her cell phone went through countless times hoping to reach Malik, but none was picked. She sent dozens of messages to him, still no reply. She was now tense and apprehensive. She feared something may have befallen his friend. In a state of a distress, she moved to the director's office. He assured her that he had informed the police and dispatched men to go and check Malik's residence. Without much comfort, Jaraya turned her office, opened her door, and to her surprise, found Malik seated on her visitor's chair. She quickly moved over. Malik, where have you been? For Christ's sake, we have been trying to reach you, Jaraya exclaimed. Hi, Jaraya. Nice to meet you, Malik said. Nice to meet me. You're talking as if we are meeting for the first time. Jaraya muted. Didn't you see my calls? She inquired again, but there was just something about the person that was seated in front of him. There was a lot about him that was not Malik. I missed your call. Sorry, I was out of coverage. Malik said, out of coverage? Are you a telephone? Out of coverage doing what? Do you know everybody's calling you a thief? Me? A thief? Well, I am not human, Malik said. The statement made Jaria curious. She moved from a seat and motioned towards him. He was still seated. His face was not moving at all. He was stiff as a sculpted portrait. Malik, what are you saying? Are you okay? Jaria moved her head closer to him. Yes, I am. Don't touch me, he warned. And why is that? Are you sure you're okay, Malik? She asked again, a little sentimental. In that instant, her phone rang. She quickly picked up the call and listened to it. Initially, her expression was neutral, but as she kept on listening, her face fell. It was conspicuous that she had received some bad news. After listening to the entire call with notes and grants, she came sad and petrified at the same time. She could not believe what she had just said. Something was not right. Almost in tears, she slowly stood up like someone who wanted to move away from Malik and meet her. Malik, who are you? Are you a ghost? Malik moved his eyes a little up and responded, no, I'm not. Why do you ask that? She was apprehensive. She was confused. She decided not the shrewdest thing to do she could think of at that moment. She scurried and touched his hand. The action produced a minor twitch, and she moved forward again and tried to touch his body again. A current stopped her fingers, and another man tremor followed. And then all broke loose. She quickly panicked as the image of Malik started to disintegrate. I said, "Do not touch me," Malik bellowed again, but it was too late. What? Dara jerked back. The image that was seated on a chair as Malik quickly dissolved into a tiny kite that was levitating in the air. The image of Malik was a 3D hologram. All this while, the drone that had produced the hologram quickly cleared, circularly darted in the room. In the office, the confused lady was still trying to decipher what was happening when the drone spoke to her. "Hello, you must be Jaraya. Nice to meet you. I am Iron Boy. I need your help. What on God's earth are you? And before that, what is happening? What's the meaning of all this? Where did Malik go? Slow down. That's a lot of questions to be answered, don't you think?" So this actually what happened. So actually, the image that was seated in front of the lady was not actually Malik. It was actually the drone that has created a hologram of Malik. And throughout, Jaraya and the drone work together. The drone is called Iron Boy. They work together to be able to bring the culprit and the killer of Malik to book. And actually, the person who actually poisoned Malik turns out to be the same person who has actually embezzled the money in the company. So in the end, they are able to comprehend this man called Casper, and that is the end of the story. But like as I said, the story actually does not end because we believe that there's so much we can do with this story because the Iron Boy drone can actually be used by the police to solve crime. So this can be a detective novel. And actually, that's what I was saying that ideas don't really end when it comes to creative writing. There's not like ending. We actually pause and we continue later. So resolution is very important in your storytelling process because it's the natural progression of life, and it's it's good you try and resolve a bit of most of the stories that you tell so that it will ease the mind of your audience a little bit. But remember, in all, stories don't end. You just pause and continue later. So thank you very much for this session, for joining us. We have the final session coming in next week, and I wish you all the best. Like I said earlier, if you want to have access to the material I'm using for this class, kindly send me a message. My information is below this YouTube channel, below this video. You can send me a message via Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and I will do all to forward all the materials to you so that you can learn from. Thank you once again for joining in for today's session. I hope to see you for the final session next week, and have a nice weekend. Bye bye.